Well, how are you guys doing? Feeling good? Yeah, you ready for MyLife weekend? Yeah, that's right, baby. Well, guys, I am so pumped to be with you. And, one of the reasons I'm so pumped is because I really do. I believe this weekend is going to be one of those marker moment kind of weekends. You know, those moments you look back on and you're like, man, that just marked my life in the most meaningful, in the most authentic, in the most significant way. I think that's going to happen for every single one of us. And in fact, my greatest hope for you this weekend, honestly, is that you discover that there is a God and that this God is 100% for you, for every single one of us. And so I am pumped to be with you. I'm excited. For those of you I don't know, my name is Buck Giebelhaus, and I have the privilege to be the lead pastor here at North Point. And it's a really cool job. I get to get kind of a front row seat to see a lot of life change and a lot of things happen. And so that's exciting for me to see. But one of the cool things about the job here is that I actually get to pastor a church in kind of the neighborhood I grew up in. In fact, I grew up in Round Rock area, just a little bit from here, and I went to Round Rock schools. There we go, baby. What's that? Oh, yeah, you're cheering. That's awesome. Yeah, so I'm with you, baby. We're together now. Yeah. So anyways, some of the schools I went to, maybe you've gone to these schools. One of those is Chisholm Trail Middle School right there. Anybody? Okay, yeah, here we go. You and I, we're together now. And then, so I love middle school. I had a great time. In fact, I call that my Heisman football days because that's the only time I played football. And I kind of look back as an older man and go, yeah, that's when it was, for me. Anyways, so I moved on from middle school, and then I went to the raddest and coolest, and we talked about this, high school, you can imagine. Round Rock High School. Oh, yeah, baby. And as you can tell, I played golf there, and so golf was a big part of my, are you a golfer? Yes. Are you really? This is good. Oh, you do? Okay, that's cool. Good to meet you. Yes. So I played golf in high school, and it was awesome, and I was fortunate to get a scholarship to the University of Houston. Go Cougars! Really? There's some Cougar fans. Go Shasta, the Paul Shasta. You guys know that? Anybody? Anyways, so we'll just move on from that. And so after college, it was awesome. And then came back to Austin, and I began working at Dell. And I loved my time there. But what was really cool at Dell is I met the most stunning, the most beautiful, the most gorgeous woman I have ever met. And I asked her, I said, hey, would you marry me? And she said, yes, which I was like, really? You're going to marry me? I mean, it was awesome. And so Jill and I, my beautiful wife, this is a picture of Jill and I. And there she is. Look at her. Yeah. I'm just going to take a moment here with her. She's so amazing. Anyways, so here's the cool deal. In 6 days from now, January 23rd, we are going to celebrate our 21st year of marriage. And guys, it's wild. It's so exciting. And here's the thing I'm looking forward to. For our anniversary, we're going to go to dinner, and we're going to have some fine food. And then after dinner, we're going to have some fun. And I'm excited for that. So, all that's going to happen. Anyways, yeah. So, anywho, I'm not sure what you... So, we're going to have a lot of fun, and because Jill and I like to have fun, we have 5 boys right here. Here they are. Yes. So, there they are, and what's kind of fun is my 3 oldest sons. They are in here. I think I just saw you, Sam. Sam's right here. And then Luke, I think, is back in the corner. There you go, Luke. And then there's Timbo. There he is. And then my twins are somewhere in the back. I have no idea where they are. And so Jill and I have 5 boys together, and it's awesome. Having 5 boys is kind of crazy. There are days I'm like, I think we may have had too many. But we love them. Every single one of them, lots of fun UFC nights, crazy nights. And so, not only have I been married 21 years to a beautiful woman, almost 21 years, not only do we have 5 boys together, but I have a question for you. And my question, yeah. And my question for you is, how old do you think I am? And before you tell me, listen, I've got a $25 gift card. And if you answer this within 5 years, this is all yours. So take a look real quick. Get this, right here. I've got some fluffiness. So this means I'm old-ish. So what do you think? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 47. Whew. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. I am 44 years old. There you go. Way to go. Congratulations. Wow. So there we go. So here's the deal. And this is important. Listen, I've been married 21 years. I've got 5 sons, and I'm 44 years old. Which I know. When you hear that, and if I'm sitting where you're sitting, you're going like, well, that's great, but what do we have in common? I mean, I see the world perhaps quite a bit different than you, and that would be fair because it is true. I mean, we see the world differently, and I get that. And just an example of this, I mean, think about this, how we see the world differently and how we kind of perceive things differently. If you see this picture, if you and I saw this picture together, 2 people doing this, what comes to your mind and what you would say, oh, they're making out, see? But I would see this differently. And there's a gap. And when I see 2 people doing that, do you know what I call it? I call it mugging. You guys ever heard that? Mugging's not a peck. Mugging is like getting down. It's like getting aggressive. That's mugging. That's what I would call that. Now, another example of this, another quick example of how I think, we may have a gap is when you see this picture or this sign right here, when you see this, immediately what comes to your mind? Hashtag. Yeah, you think hashtag. Do you know what comes to my mind immediately? And then I go, yeah, that's right. You know this. You guys are in. Now, this last picture before I show you it, then we'll move on. But I'm just trying to say, I get there's a gap between us. But this last picture, I got to prepare you for because it may, cause some tension. So here we go. This last picture is this dude heaving. Look at that. That is aggressive kind of heaving. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, that's a good stream coming out, the whole thing. Now, when you see that, you think and you say this. You say, gross. Man, that's gross. That's disgusting. Do you know what comes to my mind? I think, barf me out, man. Barf me out. You guys ever heard that? No? Well, back in high school, you used to say it like, oh, man, barf me out, that kind of thing, or gag me with a spoon. Anybody hear that? Yeah, just a little bit. Anyways, here's the deal. So here's what I know, is that there are some differences. That you and I, we can see the world differently when we see different pictures, what comes to our mind and what we say, it's different. And I just want to acknowledge that because I think if I'm sitting where you're sitting, you're probably thinking like, what is this 44-year-old dude going to talk to me about? Because we see the world different. But even though we do have those things that are different, do you know what we have in common? Do you know the thing every single one of us have in common? Is this, a childhood. That every single one of us were little boys and little girls, and you were 4 years old or 5 years old, and then you were 10, and then, now you're like, 15, 14, 15, 16, 17. I mean, we've all experienced a childhood, and including me. I mean, way back when I was a little boy. In fact, here's a picture when I was probably like 2 or 3 years old. And that's me and my sister right there, and my sister is 4 years older than me, and her name is Duck, and my name is Buck. And you probably would go, were your parents on drugs? And the answer to that is yes, they were. And that's why they named it this. Because my name's really Justin and her name's Melanie, and we've never been called that. So this is kind of weird. But my point is this. I was like 2 or 3 years old. And then I got older. And I experienced a childhood as maybe, 8th grade, 9th grade. And this is, I think, when I was about 9th grade right here. And this is my homemade weight set right here. And then some muscles right there. If you look real close, just focus in, see those muscles? Pretty much the last time that happened. But here's the deal. So, I had a childhood. You guys had a childhood. Now, here's why I'm bringing this up. And here's why I would say this is our common ground. And this is really, really important. So don't miss this. Look up here. The reason why this is an important topic for us to talk about is because the number one place that our identity is shaped is in our childhood. The number one place your identity and my identity is shaped and molded is in our childhood. And when you think about identity, it's really important to understand what we're talking about tonight. So identity literally is two things. It's a sense of self. I mean, think about it this way. It's not, the sense of self isn't that idea to go like, hey, I'm a father, I'm a pastor, I'm a husband. No. That's not my sense of self. It's my core. It's the question if I ask you, if I said, who are you? Who are you? Think about that. That's a sense of self. That's identity. The other piece of identity, which is really important to know, is a sense of worth. That's where do I get my worthiness? Where do I get my significance? Where does that come from? And guys, this is why this is so important to talk about tonight. The thing we have in common is childhood. And I'm telling you, all the research points to this. The number one place that our identity is shaped is in our childhood. In fact, all the science and research points to this. There's actually an individual by the name of Brene Brown. She lives here in Texas. Isn't that a good picture, Brene, right here, if you know who she is? Anyway, she's like on TED Talks, and she's a researcher and all this kind of stuff. And Brene, her field of expertise, she's a doctor, her whole field of expertise is to research people's identity and people's worth and people's value. And here's what she says about childhood. And you may not know this. This is kind of cool. Think about this. She says this, that you don't, I don't, we don't have our sense of self until we're 2 years old. Because before the age of 2, if you ask like a 1.5 or a 1-year-old, you said, hey, touch your nose, and their mom's sitting next to them, a 1.5-year-old won't touch their nose, they'll touch their mom's nose. And then you look at that same 1.5-year-old and you're like, touch your mom's nose. And they'll end up touching their nose because they don't have their sense of self yet. But at 2 years old, it's fascinating what happens. Because at 2, you ask that same child, hey, touch your mom's nose. They'll go, oh, okay. Maybe, a couple other things. And then you say, touch your nose. And they'll go, okay. Whew. And 2-year-olds are just kind of a little bit wacky. I mean, 2-year-olds have discovered that they are a self. Like, it's me. Wow. And if you're a parent, this is a terrible twos when they get crazy. And part of the reason why terrible twos happen is because that individual discovered, I am a me. I am a self. That happens at the age of 2. And then, this is even more fascinating. Did you know by the age of 5? I mean, think about this. Like, what do you remember before you were 5? You know at the age of 5, 50% of all your identity has already been shaped? Did you know that? Your sense of self, who am I? All of that was shaped before the age of 5. My sense of worth, like, where's my worthiness come from? All of that, 50% of it was shaped at the age of 5. And the way you and I talk about it in our culture today, when I say, hey, why do you think that way or why do you feel that way? You would say, well, I've just always felt that way. I've just always, felt or thought that way. Or we say, I think I was just born that way. And that's reasonable. I get all that. Because we can't remember all the things that took place when we were 1, 2, 3, 4, and even 5. But that's where our identity is shaped. And then we get older. And then we turn 10 and 11 and 12. And our identity continues to be shaped. And your identity, my identity, is shaped by things like this, by not only family, but by friends. And our friends, so we hang out with individuals who, they accept us and they go, hey, I see you and I see your brokenness and I see your goodness and I just want to hang with you. I just accept you. And there's a sense of worthiness in that. And that shapes our identity. And you guys have seen this. I mean, you've seen that guy who wears like tennis shoes and shorts and a t-shirt day after day, week after week. And then that individual starts hanging out with somebody, a group of guys or his friends that wear like cowboy boots, Wranglers, big old belt buckle, they spit and dip, because that's what you do, I guess, if you're a cowboy, and a cowboy hat. And you see week after week after week, eventually, that guy who used to wear tennis shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt is now starting to wear boots, and now starting to wear Wranglers, and now starting to wear a hat, and now starting to spit and dip. And you go, wow, that's amazing. Their identity is being shaped by friends. And not only that, but do you know what else shapes our identity? It's likes. It's social media. It's like, hey, man, the more likes and the more views I get, I feel good about myself. You wake up and there's a ton of views or a ton of likes with something you posted. I mean, there's some worth and value there. In fact, just this last week, I was hanging out in my kitchen, and my youngest twin, Jonathan, he was on the computer, and he was playing around. And then I was like, Jonathan, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm looking up my YouTube channel. It's called Twins Gaming. Him and Michael, created this channel. And so he was looking it up. And then I'm not kidding you. All of a sudden, he's in the living room, and he yells this out. He goes, 25! 25! And I'm like, whoa, what? Jonathan, what's going on? And he goes, Dad, 25 views. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, there it is. I mean, he feels so good because of the views. I mean, social media, I'm just telling you, likes, views. It impacts our sense of worth. You know what else does? What else happens is success. Man, you're successful on the football field. You're successful in sports. You're successful at school. You get into that school of choice. A lot of people like you. You got that girl. You got that guy. I mean, you kind of walk around with your shoulders back. You feel pretty good, especially after a great game or, whatever you made on the SAT. If you had success, you feel really good. There's this sense of worth. But isn't it also true? Failure? Man, that can shape an identity. Maybe you have a bad game, or maybe he breaks up or she breaks up, or maybe your parents go through a divorce and you feel like that's a failure on your part. What do you feel that next morning? I mean, you just feel like that sense of hopelessness, like, is there any point to this thing? You know what else shapes our identity? Is culture. And culture, every single day of our life, tells us what you should do and what you should wear and how you should talk. And what's wild about culture is culture's constantly shifting. I mean, you think about in the 1950s. I mean, in the 1950s, if you looked at a Playboy magazine in the 1950s, I mean, it was basically swimsuits, very modest swimsuits. But in the 1950s, people in culture would be like, oh my gosh, you can't look at that, right? But today you look on your phone, and man, culture has shifted, hasn't it? Because you can see about anything you want to see. In the 1950s feels like Smurfs compared to what we see today. And not only is that, but when it comes to music, I mean, music has radically changed our culture, and music informs what you feel and what you think, and gets you going, and man, my sense of worth and what I should do in this world. I mean, music is impacting. In the 1950s, you know who was like the hot music guy? Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley, he did that hip thrust, right there, boom, that's weird. I won't do that again. But, back then when he did the hip thrust, do you know everybody freaked out? Moms and dads were like, son, daughter, don't look. He's like Satan. It was terrible. But hasn't culture shifted? I mean, you watch music videos today. In fact, as a parent, honestly, with my 11-year-old twins, I have a hard time playing any of the top 100 songs on iTunes because of what they're talking about and what they're saying about women and what they're saying about money and success and all this kind of stuff. I mean, that's a lot of explanation. Now, I'm not knocking any of that. I'm not saying any of that's wrong. My point, you got to listen because this is so important, guys, for me, for you, for us, is that our identity is being shaped by those things. And we could go on, but just one last thing. It's self. And this is so wild because if you study human history, which I don't know if you do, but if you do, what's wild is this has never happened in human history. This is a phenomenon. This idea to say, hey, you know what? You got to look within. You got to lead where your heart leads. I mean, whatever you discover here, that's who you are. I mean, this is the first time really in human history that we're looking for identity here. We've never looked for it here. And again, I'm not here to say right and wrong. I'm just here to say, that's where our identity is shaped. And that's true for you and it's true for me. In fact, one of the cool things about getting older, and you guys have experienced this, but one of the cool things about getting older is you get to look back on your life and you get to see things for what they are. I mean, when you look back on when you were 5 years old and you go, okay, when I was 5, the things you thought were cool and the Barbies and all, whatever that is. I mean, it's radically changed. And now if you're 15, 16, 17, you look back when you were 5 and you're like, man, I didn't know that much, but I can see life differently today. And that's going to be true when you're 25. That's going to be true when you're 45. You'll look back and the lens just gets wider and wider and you can see how pieces fit together in your life. And if you're looking for it, you can see how your identity has been shaped. And so as a 44-year-old, when I look back, I'm telling you guys, my mom and dad, they shaped my identity. I promise you that. And they did some amazing things to shape my identity. But there's some things I struggle with even today, and I've struggled with my whole life. as a result of what happened between the ages of 0 and 12 or 0 and 15 or 0 and 18. In fact, when it comes to my dad, I think about my dad, and there's so many amazing things about him and my mom. They were married almost 40 years before my mom passed away from cancer about 8 years ago. And so I grew up in a home that they were together. And again, great stuff. But when it came to my dad, on the other side of him, especially as a little boy, the thing I always felt around him, on the other side of him, was perfection. It had to be perfect. And he demanded it. And in fact, to kind of capture the essence of what it felt like on the other side of my father, I want to just tell you a quick story. And it happened when I was 10 years old. And when I was 10, I remember I came out of my house and my dad was in his truck. And, he's about to take off, so the truck's running. He was with his friend, and he forgot something. And so I saw him run back in the house, and as a little 10-year-old, I was thinking, hey, I just want to go out and hang out in my dad's truck, and pretend I'm driving. And so I get in my dad's truck, and I'm like, yeah, look at me, NASCAR, baby, Think of a 10-year-old, that's what you do. And my dad's friend is just standing right outside the truck. Well, all of a sudden, as I was pretending, I hit the emergency brake, and it released the car. And it's running, and it starts rolling towards our neighbor's house. As a 10-year-old, I'm freaking out. I'm like, what's going to happen? I don't know what to do. I'm just a little guy. And all of a sudden, as it starts rolling, I see my dad, and he's coming out of the house, and he begins running towards the car. And my dad pretty consistently used a lot of expletives on the other side of me to describe who I was and to describe my behavior. And he's yelling at the top of his lungs to where every neighbor could hear. He's saying, hit the blankety-blank brake. What the blankety-blank are you doing? What the blankety-blank do you think you are? And I'm sitting there just panicking. What do I do? My dad's friend was pretty close to the truck. He just jumped in, and he hit the brake, and we stopped about 10 feet from the neighbor's house. No harm, no foul. But my dad came around the driver's side where I was sitting, and he reached in, and he grabbed me, and he yanks me out, and he pulled me into the house, and he did what he always did. He yelled at me and told me who I am in so many words that I would never repeat here. And then he spanked me over and over. And I remember as a 10-year-old, this feels like yesterday. As a 10-year-old, about an hour after he did all that, I remember sitting there thinking, and the room was just cold. I remember that. It was so cold in the room. And I thought to myself, gosh, you know what? I so wish there would be a day I didn't feel like a failure. Because as a 10-year-old, honestly, guys, I couldn't remember a single day where my father was proud of me because I couldn't be perfect. And that impacted me. And not only that, but then when I went to my mom, and again, my mom, so many great things, a work ethic and all that stuff, so many wonderful things. But when I went to my mom and I would try to share stuff with her and just say, hey, Mom, here's what's going on. Like, do you know how hard it is to be on the other side of Dad? Have you talked to him about that? Does he really have to yell at me that way? Does he have to call me all those expletives? Does that have to happen? Mom, can you talk? Because that's hurtful. And when I would go to my mom and I would tell her, hey, at school so-and-so broke up with me, or at school so-and-so was bullying me, or hey, I just played a terrible golf tournament and I feel like such a failure. When I would bring those kind of inner, deeper emotions where you feel vulnerable and a little bit scared to kind of put that out there with my mom, I wanted her to just meet those emotions. But my mom, she didn't. And what my mom's favorite statement to me anytime I brought emotional things up, just suck it up. But just suck it up. Suck it up. Your life is good. Just suck it up. And I don't know if you've ever felt that feeling to where you just put yourself on the line and say, hey, man, here's what's really going on. And somebody just tells you, get over it. It feels like a hammer just coming down. And for me, it's probably 14, 15 years old. On the other side of my mom, and I remember verbatim saying in my head, I will never feel again. I'm done feeling. It's too painful to dig something deep, put it out there, and hear the words. Suck it up. And so it's probably about, 12, 13, 14-year-old. Here's what I felt: flawed and unworthy of love and belonging. I felt like you're just a screw up. You never get it right, and you are unworthy of love. That was part of my childhood. But then, went to Chisholm Trail and Round Rock. And man, I met some guys and some cool guys who just accepted me for who I was and all my flaws. And these were my friends, and I started to get a sense of identity from them and started to do what they did because they made me feel good. And not only that, but I was having success in golf, and I was working my butt off, and I was getting better and better, and my name were on the announcements all the time. I was in the news, and people were like, whoa, where are you getting scholarships? And man, I'm telling you, success, it fed my worthiness. I felt like, man, I feel good. In high school, I was dating a girl in college, and I was in high school, and everybody looked at her, and they were like, oh, she's so hot. And I'm like, yeah, this is, and I felt so cool. And I felt so good about myself and my sense of self and my sense of worth. It was being shaped because of those influences. But then I got to college. And in college, all my friends, it's not like they abandoned me. They just went different directions. And I had to make new friends, and that was weird. And then in college, all the golfers, goodness, they're phenomenal. Every single one of them. And now I'm starting to experience some failure in college with golf. And then my girlfriend that I had sacrificed so much for, that I thought was so hot, she cheated on me with one of my good friends who, by the way, was not a friend. And then she broke up with me. And I remember, I just felt, who am I? I suck at golf now. I don't have a girlfriend. And I felt completely hopeless when it came to my identity. So what did I do? I did what everybody told me to do. I did what culture told me to do. Do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever makes you feel good. So I jumped in, and I partied it up and crossed those moral lines, but here's the thing about it. Here's the thing that I experienced, and I've talked to so many people who've experienced the same. When you cross those lines and do those things, my goodness, it feels good in the moment because it's feeding your identity. I feel worthy finally. I feel like I'm enough finally. But then you wake up the next day, and you look in the mirror, and you know what you've done. And I'm telling you guys, I came to a point where I would wake up morning after morning, felt great that night, but that next morning I'd look at myself in the mirror and I'd go, I hate you. I hate you. And guys, for me personally, that was a point in time in my life that I experienced an identity crisis. I really didn't have a sense of self. I really didn't have that sense of worth and value as a man. And what I discovered is that all the things you and I chase and all the things that, shape our identity, they're just not enough. They're not enough. They all fall short. It's true when it comes to family. Hey, your mom and dad, and the older you get, the more you begin to see this. Your mom and dad, I'm sure, are great. And there's wonderful things about them, but I don't know a single perfect parent. And they've got flaws and they've got brokenness, and it's going to come out and it's going to impact your sense of self and your sense of worth. And you're going to discover, hey, it's just not enough. It's not enough. When it comes to identity, friends, they're wonderful, but I'm telling you, you have a best friend betray you. You have a friend like mine who cheated, with my girlfriend. Hey, I thought we were close, but you feel that kind of betrayal? Man, it messes with your sense of worth and sense of self. When it comes to likes, social media, you can chase that, you can do that, and I get it, guys. The more likes and the more views, it feels good. But I read stories all the time. In fact, 2 months ago, I read this story about Ruby Seal right here. She's a beautiful girl. And at the age of 15, she took her life. And when I read the interview of her mom, who was absolutely crushed, her mom said, yeah, Ruby, she spent 8 to 10 hours a day on social media, kept putting all these posts and going, hopefully I get enough likes, hopefully I get enough views. And then one morning as she was a 15-year-old, she woke up, she had 0 views. And she took her life because she put her identity, her sense of worth in likes and social media. It's just not enough. When it comes to success, success feels really good. The more money you make, the more, hey, I'm, great at school or great at, in sports. It feels good. I get it. But it doesn't quite satisfy. And there's so many examples of this, but one of the great examples of this guy right here, Tom Brady. He missed the playoffs, bummer. I wish they would have gone further. But Tom Brady, after he won 3 Super Bowls, I showed this interview to my boys, but 3 Super Bowls, and he says this. He says, gosh, I won 3 Super Bowls, and I just don't get it, because after 3 Super Bowls, the pinnacle of success, my question is, There's got to be more. It doesn't quite satisfy because it falls short. In fact, one of my favorite quotes when it comes to success is a quote that says this. Next slide. The loneliest moment in life is when you have just experienced that which you thought would deliver you the ultimate, and it's just let you down. I thought this would deliver, but I woke up the next morning and I saw myself in the mirror and it fell short. That's not only true with success, but guys, that's true when it comes to failure. It's not enough. That's true when it comes to culture. And when it comes to self, this idea about looking here for your identity, be careful with that. Because as I alluded to earlier, today you get this. If you look back on your 5-year-old self and what you thought as a 5-year-old, if you were brutally honest, you would go, oh, as a 5-year-old, I was an idiot. I didn't know a lot, right? And I'm telling you, the older you get, you begin to become aware of this. And when you're 25, you look back on your 15-year-old self and there were some great things about you, but you realize, man, I didn't know as much as I know today. And honestly, the things I felt and the things I thought, are you kidding me? And then when you're 35 and 45, you keep looking back, and at every season of life, you discover, oh my gosh, like I was so confused, I didn't even know. So to base your identity on something that is constantly shifting and changing inside of you is one of the most confusing things you can possibly do. So the question for tonight, as we wrap up our time, the question for you and me is this. Where can you find identity that will satisfy and last? For real. Where can you find identity in your life? Your sense of self and sense of worth that you're like, it just doesn't change. It feels so good in the midst of success, in the midst of failure. This identity doesn't change. Well, I'm telling you guys, it's not found in your earthly father. Although your earthly dad may be amazing. The identity that will not fade, that will satisfy, is found in your Heavenly Father. That your Heavenly Father is 100% for you. And the reason I know God is for you is because look at this. In the beginning, He created humans. He created you. He created me. And He created us in His own image, male and female. He created us. Now, guys, this is a big deal. Because this is saying God didn't just create something over here. Like, hey, I created this house or I created this car. No, God said, I created you, and I created you in my own image. This is like a father to a son, a father to a daughter. This is like when I look at my sons, I oftentimes go, man, my chromosomes are in you because you were made in my image. Man, and they get all weirded out, but I say that because they're my sons. Did you know God just didn't create, but He created you in His own image? God is for you. In addition to that, God knit you together. This is one of my favorite passages where God knit you together in your mother's womb. This is such a cool thing to think about. That He fearfully and wonderfully made you. Have you lost sight of that perhaps? That He knit you together with purpose and meaning? That you really do have that? That He knit you together, and when He thinks of you, He says, wonderful, 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 that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You have such worth. And I love this passage in addition to this where God says, you know what? I know every hair on your head. I think about that a lot. Because if you know every hair on somebody's head, you know them personally, and you are 100% for them, and they have such worth and value. But perhaps my favorite passage where it talks about God's worth and how He, to you and to me, is this one where He says to you and to me, He says, hey, do you know you're the apple of my eye? Did you know that you are the apple of my eye? Now, do you guys know what this means, the apple of the eye? Have you heard this before? This is such a powerful thing. And I want to illustrate this real quick. And so we're just going to pause just a second. And to illustrate this, I want to actually ask my son, Sam. Where's Sam? Where is he? Sam. If Sam can come on up, and I want to show you something. So give him a big round of applause. Come on, Sam. So this is something I did with my boys when they were smaller. We don't do as much today. But I would talk about this. I'd say, hey, boys, do you know God looks at you and says you're the apple of my eye? And his little boys, they go like, what does that mean? You know? And you would do that too when you were just little bitty. But here's the deal. What I would do with Sam, what I would do with my boys is this is how I'd go. And this is how I'd explain it. And I would look at Sam, and I'm going to pretend you guys aren't here. And it's just him and me, and we're hanging out in his bedroom or whatever, and we're just talking. And I would go this. I would say, Sam, hey, let me tell you what the apple of God's eye, let me tell you what the apple of my eye looks like. And so I'd say, Sam, look into my eyes. And I'd open my eyes really big, and I'd say, look into my eyes. And then I would say, come closer. And I just grab his little face, and he's bigger now. But back then, and I'd say, Sam, my eyes are as wide as they can be. Come closer. When he was little, he came closer. Anyways, and he would get really close. And then and when he was little, he would be staring, go like, whoo. And then I would ask him this question. I would go, Sam, what do you see? What do you see? And what would you say?
Me?
I see me. And then I would look at him and I said, because you're the apple of my eye. You are the reflection of my eye because you have value. And I love you. So thank you, big guy. Now, okay, so real quick, back up here and then we'll be done. But here's why this is so important. I hope you never forget that your Heavenly Father does that with you. God says you are the apple of his eye. In other words, I hope you never forget this, especially in your harder, darker moments of life, that you can remember that God's looking at you and say, come here, come on. And God grabs your little face and he brings you closer and closer and closer. And when you doubt your identity, he asks you the question, who do you see in my eyes? And what you're going to see is you, because you're the reflection, the apple of his eye, because you have so much value. And he loves you so much, and you have so much value that he gave his son. If you give your one and only son for somebody, you know that person is valuable. He gave his son. He so loved you. And not only that, but what's so cool, he invites you into a new sense of self. That was a sense of worth. But here's your sense of self. He says that he gave the right or gave the power to become children of God to those who received him. In other words, when you put your trust and faith in Jesus Christ, did you know you can become a child of God? When you say, hey, I'm no longer trusting me, I'm going to trust you for the forgiveness of my sins. I'm going all in with my confidence, not in me, but in the person of Jesus Christ. He says, you have the right to be a son of God. You have the right to be a daughter of God, a child of God. That's who you are. And then I love this, that he invites us into a brand new identity, that when you put your faith and trust in Christ, you're a new person. That's literally translated new identity. That God looks at you and says, I'm inviting you into a new sense of self, into a brand new identity, and it is not achieved, it is received. Because if you try to earn this identity, God, do you see me? Do you see me? Do you see how much I'm doing? You'll lose it and you'll doubt it. If you receive it as the gift it is and go, God, I trust that I am the apple of your eye, that's something you can never, ever lose. When it comes to your identity, the thing I hope you never forget this weekend and for the rest of your life, that when it comes to your identity, that I am a child of God. I hope you never forget that. That when it comes to your core, not, hey, I'm a mom or I'm a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm whatever. No, you are a daughter of God. That's who you are at your core. I am a son of God at my core. And when it comes to your sense of worth, I hope you never lose sight this weekend, and I hope you guys talk about this, that you can say, I am the apple of God's eye. So who's your identity? What's your identity? Who are you? Well, I am a son of God. And why do you have worth? Because I'm the apple of God's eye. He knit me together fearfully and wonderfully. And what that means is when you face success, it's going to feel good. But it doesn't change the fact that I am a child of God and the apple of God's eye. And when you face failure and maybe you wake up and there's not a lot of social media activity, or your boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with you, or maybe your parents go through a divorce, or whatever you face, those are real things, but it doesn't change who you are. For the rest of your life from this point forward, I hope you never lose sight of the fact that you are a child of God and you are the apple of God's eye. And so the question becomes, well, if I don't earn it, then how do I receive it? And Buck, what happens when life gets tough? What happens when he or she breaks up? What happens when I don't get in the school of my choice? What happens when my dad says something similar that your father said to you, how do I hold on to that identity? Well, guys, that's what I want you to talk about this weekend. I'm so honored to be with you. Thank you for your time. Let me go ahead and pray for us. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your grace. Thank you that we can all come together right here in this moment. It's such a cool moment and have a ton of fun and do a lot of giveaways. But ultimately, Father, the most meaningful thing we can do is remind ourselves of who we are, that we are children of you, and we are the apple of your eye. God, please, I lift it to you. I trust you. Please, for every one of us in the room, help us never, ever, ever forget that. In Jesus' name, amen.